Good afternoon, evening, possibly morning, depending on where you're dialing in from today, and welcome to today's webinar, What's New in Cognos 11.2.4. We've got an action-packed day for you. Today's agenda, we're going to kind of do some brief introductions of the speakers and then get right into the topic, which will be recapping the recent releases and then a deep dive into 11.2.4. There's a lot of bullet points. I'll let you just kind of read them on your own to save some time. And at the end of the presentation, we'll share some useful links, provide a quick overview of Senturus, and let you know some upcoming events, and then we'll wrap up with a live Q&A. Introductions. Joining us today is Tim Aston. Tim joined IBM 15 years ago as a developer. He is currently a senior product manager for Cognos Analytics and focuses on the Cognos homepage, customizations, and mobile support. As you know, he's very nice because he's based in Ottawa, Canada. Also joining us on the question panel today from IBM are Zach Taylor and Rahul Gupta. Zach is a product manager on the IBM Cognos Analytics team who works with data access and data modeling. He's worked with IBM for 7 years and has filled in a variety of roles within IBM Analytics, including customer success, sales, tech advisory, product management, and more. Rahul is also a product manager on the IBM Cognos Analytics team, works with business analytics, enterprise, and visualization teams, and he's been with IBM for about 3.5 years. My name is Todd Schumann. I'll be your host today. At Senturus, I run the installation, upgrade, and performance tuning practice, and I've been working with Cognos since the days of when it came on CDs and discs, just to kind of date myself a bit. Before we jump into the meat, let's just do a couple quick polls to kind of get a pulse of the audience and see what version of Cognos you're on today. So if you could just take a second and let us know, are you cutting edge? Are you somewhere in the middle? Are you still running Cognos 10? Hopefully not too many people on Cognos 10, but please take a second and just do a vote so we can kind of get a pulse on that. Okay, so it looks like the top answer was 11.1. We've got about, I don't know, good district, about 10 to 13%, 11.2.1, 11.2.2, 11.2.3, and then a small group of people on 11.2.4. Got about 4%, 4 people on Cognos 10, and some people actually on possibly an earlier version. So good to know. Thank you for that. We've got one more poll about Cognos challenges. What are your biggest challenges with Cognos? Feel free to select all that apply if you have multiple issues or multiple challenges that you're dealing with. Got enabling adoption of self-service, performance reporting, general cleanup, data migrations, hybrid environments, licensing. So it looks like a lot of performance reporting, cleanup, and a good amount of self-service enablement. Okay, thank you for those responses. I'm going to turn it over to Tim and let him kind of go through the what's new slides, and I'll be back with you at the end to kind of recap. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone joining. It's a nice big crowd today, and thank you to the good folks from Senturus for inviting myself and Zach and Rahul to speak with you today and answer your questions. So I'm going to go through a summary of what's new in this latest version of Cognos Analytics with Watson. It was released back in the middle of December, so you can get it right now. And the theme of what we're doing with Cognos with this release and with our recent releases and our going forward releases is really about getting the right data to the right people in the best way. And I think that's a theme that you'll see in this presentation and in future materials from us as well. Getting that data that is authoritative, governed data, getting it to the people that need to see it, that is customized for those people, and in a way that they can best consume, whether that's an emailed PDF or something on their phone or all kinds of other potential ways of delivering analytics. I'll cover a few of the recent releases. First, I noticed from the poll there that we've got a few of you on some previous releases. Some of you are on the latest, so this will be a bit of a review for some of you, but I'll keep this part short. 11.2.0, of course, was the first release in the what we call the 11.2 stream. This was a major release, and there was some important UI changes here around the homepage and the content navigation, as well as some more subtle changes kind of throughout the tool. So there was definitely big improvements in the usability starting with the 11.2.0 release. There was some improvements in our AI with the assistant and the forecasting supporting OLAP cubes where they didn't previously. We had some new visualizations, new customization options, better Watson Studio integration, the S3 support for TLS certificates, as well as the very big jump in performance of loading dashboards. 11.2.1, this is actually where we did rebrand. You may have noticed that I introduced this as IBM Cognos Analytics with Watson. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that is our full name nowadays. And that's to acknowledge that AI is a big part of what we do in Cognos Analytics. It's otherwise largely a name change and a recognition of where things have been going for a while now. It's not any kind of like additional add-on or anything like that you need to buy. With this release, we had a simplification of our multi-tenant on-demand cloud tiers. We used to have 3 tiers. They're now 2, and they're lower cost, starting at just $10 per user. In addition, we launched the mobile-only license. So if you have users that only want to use Cognos on a mobile device and not through their desktop computer, you can license those users now for just $5 a month. We had various mapping improvements. We added support for Dremio and IBM Cloud SQL Query. Big performance improvements with tab reports and donut visualization, bunch of other stuff too. 11.2.2. This is where we introduce what we call the natural language generation rephraser. So in 11.2.2, the natural language generation is apparent in the Explore component in a side panel on the right. And the wording for that used to be a little clunky and clearly very computer generated. And it's now just reads in a much more natural and readable way. There's some big improvements in the AI assistant. So that's where you can ask natural language questions. And as of 11.2.2, it started understanding a lot of things about time, particularly, things like, so you could ask like, what were sales by product line last year, or from this date to that date, and a lot of other ways of expressing time in those filters. Improvements across data modules, dashboard in terms of usability, and reporting as well, some improvements there. This is where kind of the full release that had all the Log4j upgrades, they were delivered in various fix packs along the way as well. But this one had the cumulative accumulation of all of those. You'll hear more about JWT later on. That's Java Web Tokens. That's to another way of authenticating into your databases. And that's, we started expanding that support in 11.2.2. 11.2.3, this was the previous release, of course, to 11.2.4. This one came out in the late summer, I believe. This was a major release for sure. We launched our support for Microsoft Teams in this release, and you're going to hear more about that support in a little bit in the latest release where it's been expanded. There was data access and data modeling improvements, some fairly significant ones. Usability improvements. No more of those narrow side panels for editing properties. You've now got a full page experience there. We have the search, which was expanded to also be able to search just subfolders and not just the entire content. Some more customization improvements on the homepage. Various visualization improvements, too numerous to mention, that are available in reporting. Improvements to Jupyter notebooks with exporting and kernel upgrades. more enhancements to the AI assistant, similar to that time-related stuff that I mentioned before. This is when we added support for things like holidays. So you could say, what were sales last Christmas? And cascading filters, last but not least, because that's a big feature. Cascading filters in dashboards, allowing you to have multiple layers of filtering that kind of filter each other. So if you've got country, state, city, that your state filter becomes filtered by the country that you select, and then your city filter gets filtered by the state and country filter that you select, and that kind of thing. So it's been a busy year, and it's been a busy, the entire 11.2 stream has been busy with a lot of new features. And 11.2.4 is an important release because it marks the end of the 11.2.0 stream. So here's a summary of what's in it. I won't read this because I'm going to go into details. I'm hitting the main highlights today. There is more than I'll cover. This is kind of the most fulsome list. I'll cover actually probably at least 3/4 of this. It's the most important things that I'm going to get into. Just want to reiterate though that before I get into some of this, is that 11.2.4 is the new long-term support release. So I notice a lot of you are still on 11.1. I'm imagining that you're on 11.1.7 because that was the previous long-term support release. 11.1.7 is continuing to be supported for now, but it will be announced sometime this year when that will go out of support, and that there'll be at least a 12-month notice on that announcement. But it's time to start thinking about upgrading. If you do prefer to stay on the long-term support releases, then this release 11.2.4 is the one for you. Of course, there will be releases after this. The next release will be 11.3.0 coming in the first half of this year. All right, so let's get into some of the detailed features. First, I'm going to talk about some stuff in the realm of AI and what we call narrative services. So there's a little video playing here right now that's showing a dashboard, but it's showing the new narrative insights feature. And I'm just going to hit pause right now to kind of explain what has happened here. So, so far this was a pretty normal dashboard experience, but we've opened this new analytics panel, and we're enabling the insights. And what you see over on the right-hand panel here is these natural language insights. And this is where that natural language rephraser that I mentioned comes in to make sure that these are insights that are not just giving you important information, but that they're easy to read, consumable, so that you can actually get something out of them as well. So I'm in edit mode right now. And what's happened is the various insights that can be generated are being shown. And then you can go in and you can favorite the ones that you think are most important and that you want your dashboard consumers to see. So now I've gotten out of edit mode. Now we're in consumption mode. So the ones that have been favorited are highlighted. You can still see the other insights as well, but it means that as an author, you can choose which insights you want to make sure that the viewers of your dashboard pay attention to. So that's a really powerful feature, obviously deeply infused with AI. So I mentioned how Microsoft Teams support was just launched recently. This is a big initiative for us that we expect to continue through multiple releases. So we certainly enhance that in 11.2.4. Now, when you are sharing to Microsoft Teams, you can choose a mix of recipients. It used to be that you had to choose just between individual users or chats or channel. Now you can have a mix of those so that you can send it to multiple destinations all at once. As well, the initial Teams support when you're embedding content in Teams, because this is not just about pushing from Cognos to Teams, but you can actually just stay within Teams, never leave Teams, and see your Cognos content. We started with just supporting dashboards within Teams, but now you can have reports in Microsoft Teams as well. So like you see in the screenshot, you've got this tab here that can be available to to different groups of users within Microsoft Teams, showing a report embedded with all the interactivity of the report and the conversation panel on the right-hand side from Teams, where you can then chat with your colleagues about what you're seeing here. We had some mobile improvements in this release, mostly around performance. This is particularly on the content tab where you load dashboards in the mobile app. That's been entirely re-architected. So this sees not just a big performance boost from the previous versions of the mobile app. You'll also see that the way that visualizations are rendered now is going to be much more consistent with how they would show up in your regular desktop browser. For example, the coloring and the conditional highlighting in tables will now be totally consistent. This is a small but much requested feature that, for the content navigation. The content navigation would always default to a tile view. And though any user could change that to be a list view, and we would remember that default, a lot of you did want to have list view be the default system-wide. So that is now possible. It's just an advanced preference that you have to configure. And now list view will be the default for all your users once you set that property. Those users can still switch back to tile view. It's not restricting that. It's just changing the default view. For those of you who did see a few still on Cognos 10, I think this is a great option if you want to keep the experience relatively consistent for your Cognos 10 users, because having this in list view is going to be very similar to the old way that Cognos Connection displayed content. All right, we're going to cover some dashboard features now. This little video here is showing the dashboard zoom feature. Let me pause it and, oops, sorry. Okay, I think this one just autoplays. I'll give a little background while this is playing here. When you create your dashboard, you've got two layout modes. One is relative, and that's where things are sized in percentages. So when you're using relative, it means as you resize your browser window, that the visualizations and the widgets in the dashboard are going to resize along with it. When you use absolute mode, everything is set to be in a fixed size in pixels. So that's often good when you don't want things to resize. But it can still be useful to, depending on your browser size, that may mean things are going to be cut off or not fill the screen necessarily. So that's why we introduced this zoom capability. So you can zoom in and out, you can see stuff bigger or smaller, make it fit your screen or more than fit your screen as you desire. So just it makes the absolute layout mode of dashboards a lot more useful and powerful, I think, by giving your users a lot more control over the size of what they then see. Some visualization enhancements around the zoom bar. I didn't mention it earlier, but this zoom bar was introduced, I think in Cognos 11.2.3 on some visualizations. We have added it to more visualizations, including visualizations now where it's both a horizontal and a vertical zoom. And this is equivalent functionality that you had already with your scroll wheel or by using pinch and unpinch and that kind of thing. But by enabling the zoom bar, like you can see here, it's just a lot less hidden. So it's, I think for a lot of users, it's just a nicer way to interact with the chart and being able to zoom in on portions of it. This has definitely been much requested, is value labels for line charts and as well the line and column combo charts. You can see a nice example of it in this picture here, how you can have the labels there right on the chart. This is, of course, a property that you can control, and then it has several properties associated with it as well for you to further customize it. We have some enhancements on the reporting front. This is quite a big enhancement, actually. I would say one of the biggest reporting enhancements, certainly one of the biggest of the year, I would say. And that's the ability for your PDF and your Excel output to include the latest visualization types. So those familiar with reporting, you know well that we have several visualization engines in the product, and these kind of map to various generations of reporting visualizations through the years. But the latest generation of visualizations, they're all rendered within the browser, unlike previous ones, which are server-side rendered and delivered as images essentially to the browser. The latest ones are all implemented client-side, but that had a disadvantage in that when you're producing PDF or Excel output, which is rendered on the server side, those visualizations wouldn't show up. So that has all changed. And you can now include those visualizations in your PDFs and Excels. So that notably includes the latest maps, our Mapbox maps, and all those great features that they can do, you know, with the bubbles and the heating and the hex spinning and all kinds of stuff. You can now have that in your PDFs. Couple of restrictions. This doesn't yet support custom visualizations, though that's coming soon. Because of the way it is implemented using the headless browser, which is only available for Windows and Linux systems. So I know that's almost all of you, but there are a few cases where this feature is excluded. Just wanted to make you aware of that. Okay, let's move on to data access enhancements. I'll spend a little time just kind of going over the overall data access landscape and kind of how we view things. And sorry, the formatting on the slide got a little mangled at some point in time. Something got lost in translation a little bit. But what I'm trying to highlight here is that you have these several different types of data sources that you can access. You've got your enterprise data warehouses with DB2, BigQuery, Snowflake. You've got various major systems that you use within your organization, like Salesforce, your OLAP sources. You've now got your data lakes, Databricks, which we'll talk a bit about more, being a major player there, as well as IBM Cloud Data Engine. Virtualized data becoming a lot more common now. There's Dremio and Trino Presto that we support, and as well as IBM's product Watson Query. Also, really growing area is your business applications and the data that they are feeding through, and wanting to get those into Cognos. So that would typically be accessed by REST APIs, but we're going to talk about C data shortly and how you can get that data into Cognos there as well. And plus, of course, your user content, which is Excel or CSV files that people upload for more ad hoc type analytics. So Databricks, this is a data lakehouse tool that is becoming very popular. So we have added support for this. This is a new data connection type in Cognos alongside you know, the many other types of data sources that we support. And C data is the other major addition in terms of data sources that we support. And what C data is they are a service that provides connectors to a variety of enterprise applications, typically through REST APIs. So that's why I say, you know, you've had the REST connector in Cognos for a few releases now, where you could create your own configuration for communicating with different applications. But I mean, sometimes that's a lot of configuration because you have to be pretty familiar sometimes with the actual REST API yourself to configure that. Also, it does have limitations which sometimes prevent you from talking to some kinds of applications. So that's where C data comes in. This is a third-party service. It's something that you would have to subscribe to. But when you do, you'll have I think this is even only a subset of the applications that it supports, and you'll be able to access the data from these applications live in Cognos, just the way you access any other data sources like your data warehouse or your uploaded files and everything in between. So you can see it's a huge list of applications. So this really, kind of increases the order of magnitude of data sources that we can actually support in Cognos, and really removes pretty much any limits on what we can support. So if you've got data, you can get into Cognos is kind of the message that I want to make sure is clear with all this. Okay, a little bit more on data sources. I mentioned JWT, Java Web Tokens. We've added support for this for Dremio now. By the way, what Java Web Tokens is it's a way that essentially the Cognos user credentials are passed along to the database for authentication. So it allows you to have an extra layer of authentication or governance into your data. Kind of the typical way of doing it is you'd usually have some kind of service account, an admin account or something like that, which would be what Cognos talks to the database with. But JWT, like I said, it allows the actual end user's credentials to be passed along so that it's the end user that is being authenticated into the database as well. So you're really allowing then that security to be managed within the database. Speaking of creating data source connections, this is a whole new experience in 11.2.4. And again, it's those little side panels and flyout things. And with creating data connections, it was especially cumbersome. I think you'd have to go through 4 or 5 or 6 layers of those. It's a brand new, very simple full screen experience. If you spend any time at all managing your data source connections in Cognos, you're definitely going to be a huge fan of this feature. It's just a massive improvement compared to the previous release. All right, on the data modeling side of things now. One of the big changes here is with dynamic schema support. This is one of those features that was supported in Framework Manager. So you could do dynamic schemas in Framework Manager, but you couldn't do them with data modules. It's one of our missions to make sure that you can do pretty much everything in data modules that you could do in Framework Manager. And this is, for some customers anyways, this is an important feature. So we are bringing this with 11.2.4, we're bringing this capability into data modules now. It's probably a good time though for me to emphasize that even though obviously data modules is where we put our modeling efforts into nowadays, we have absolutely no plans to get rid of Framework Manager. We know that many of you rely on it. It's what you use for your data models. So Framework Manager is and packages are not going anywhere. So don't ever worry about that. But it would certainly encourage you that whenever possible to use data modules for all your new modeling needs, because the gaps between it and Framework Manager now are pretty few and far between. There are some use cases where you'll have to stick with Framework Manager packages, but the majority of times you should be good to go with data modules now. We have a few more capabilities, just improving our governance around data modules, data sets, and uploaded files. And then my last topic, I think it's the last topic for today, is just some conformance updates. Some fairly minor stuff here, a few databases that were deprecated. By the way, we generally only deprecate data sources when the actual vendor themselves no longer supports them. So these are things that you couldn't even get support from Microsoft, for example, for. So that's generally why you'll see any database deprecated. We generally support, continue to keep support as long as the vendor is supporting it. Several conformance points were added. like the latest Firefox, ESR, latest versions of Oracle, Red Hat, and AIX as well. Oh, yes, sorry, I do have an additional topic. That wasn't the last topic. APIs and security. We have been working a lot to open up more APIs, making it so that those wanting to develop custom solutions with Cognos are going to have an easier time. A big step in the right direction in 11.2.4 is the support of API keys. And for those of you that develop against various other applications and REST APIs, you'll be very familiar with this kind of authentication for APIs. It's done very much in a standard way in Cognos. I think you'll be familiar with it from other tools. So it certainly makes developing applications that use Cognos REST APIs that need to authenticate into Cognos, it just makes that a lot smoother, a lot more standardized. And there are some new APIs that we have published as well around configuration, settings, and storage. This is kind of the thing that we've been looking to progress every single release with, making more and more APIs available. Oh yeah, and a little bit on the security front. We have FIPS compliance. That's one of these various kind of government compliance standards that some customers need to adhere to. So we have that. And the audit extension, we have actually now built that into 11.2.4. This used to be a separate thing that we would make available, but that's now completely built in as of this latest release of Cognos. And then finally, I think this is finally now. Sorry, I thought I was closer to the end than I was, but I'm very close now. But to get the upgrade, it's really just like any other Cognos upgrade. You can go to Fix Central and download it. For those of you moving from 11.1.7, I would certainly encourage you to do the upgrade. And I would say that, based on, now we've had quite a number of customers that have done the upgrade, is the experience is generally quite a positive one. There aren't significant under the covers architectural differences actually between 11.1.7 and 11.2.4, not the ones that kind of caused large disruptions or, difficult compatibility situations or anything like that. So it is generally speaking a very smooth upgrade. So I would encourage anyone on a previous release to get on this release. Like I said, it's a long-term support release. That means you're going to get a minimum of 2 years where you'll be seeing updates to security fixes and other critical issues, as well as the option for an additional 1 year support beyond that. So this is a release, if you don't want to upgrade that frequently, it's the one for you. I certainly would encourage you to upgrade frequently if your business allows for it, so you always have the latest and greatest features. But for those that you prefer not to, 11.2.4 is the one to stay on. All right, and that is the end of my part, and this is, I think, is a good segue back to the Senturus folks.
Great, thank you, Tim. Lots of great information there. Also have some really good questions coming in, so keep them coming. I'm going to go through a couple Senturus slides, and then we'll answer or try to answer as many of the questions that haven't already been answered at the end. As far as getting help upgrading Cognos, we do that. We have 3 different types of upgrade support plans that we provide. We implement hundreds of Cognos upgrades, installations, and configurations every year. That experience translates into efficiencies and best practices that we share with our clients. Next slide, please. Additional resources. We provide hundreds of free resources on our website in the Knowledge Center that aren't comparisons. We have been committed to sharing our BI expertise for over a decade. Just go to senturus.com/resources and check them out. We've got some upcoming events. Dashboarding comparison, Power BI, Tableau, and Cognos. That's on January 26th, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And yours truly will be providing a tips for installing Cognos Analytics 11.2.4, Thursday, February 9th, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. So go ahead and register for those if you're interested in any of those topics. Modern BI, accelerated and accessible. A little background on Senturus. We provide BI modernizations, migrations across the entire BI stack. We provide a full spectrum of BI services, training in Power BI, Cognos, Tableau, Python, Azure, proprietary software to accelerate bimodal BI and migrations. We particularly shine in hybrid BI environments. And we've got a long history of success. We've been focused exclusively on business analytics for more than 20 years, and our team is large enough to meet all your business analytic needs, yet small enough to provide personal attention. We are also hiring. Current positions listed on the next slide. So if you're interested in joining us, we're looking for the following positions. Our FinOps consultant will be part of our new cloud management product and practice. Just look at the job descriptions on our site and email us your resume if interested at jobs@senturus.com. Let's go to the Q&A panel. So if you've got questions, go ahead and put them in now. Hopefully you've got some of your answers already answered by the panelists today. I know they've kind of cranked out a bunch, but I'm going to queue up a couple here, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. We've got about, 15, 20 minutes left. So a couple, I think easier ones about support. How long will 11.2.4 long-term support be in terms of support in terms of the life cycle? Is it 1 year, 2 years? Is that how it usually is? I believe it's like 2 years.
Yeah, it's a minimum of 2 years. So that means, and what we mean by support for those 2 years is, not only will we take your phone calls if you have problems, but there will be updates, critical defect fixes, security fixes, and that kind of thing over that time period. So it's a minimum of 2 years, and then with an option for 1 year extended on top of that. So if you want to go for as long as 3 years, that's guaranteed.
Great. Okay. There are a couple questions about the CData connection to data sources. Do you have any additional information on that as far as licensing or what that involves?
Yeah, we've got my colleague Zach on the line here. You want to handle some of that, Zach? Talk a bit about CData.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So there is I put a link into the Q&A. Hopefully everyone can see it. If not, I can try to put it in the chat. So 2 links that I can put in there. First one is a link to the CData webpage that shows you the list of their connectors that are available. So I would suggest definitely browsing through that. I think they have about 130 connected sources right now available, and they're adding to that list. As they add other drivers to it's actually called the CData Cloud Connect product, or it's a service, I suppose. It's a connectivity service. And so they're adding new drivers to that all the, on a regular basis, and expanding the number of drivers. So I'll send the link. You can go to that. Oh, it's in the chat now. Thank you for that. That's where you get the list. Additionally, on that page, there is a link to the licensing information for CData. They have different options available for, however much you want to scale that up. And then the second link there is for the IBM plus a CData community webinar that's coming up on February 2nd. You can register for that, and we'll jump in. We'll do a kind of description of, how Cognos is connecting to CData, a little bit about the CData company. They're going to be there and introduce themselves, run through a demo, and you'll get a feel for how this new connectivity can really just like I think the word in my mind is like explosion of new use cases, right? So the data that may be generated in some of these applications like a Workday, ServiceNow, Jira, even like Excel Online, Google Sheets, Gmail, calendars, all these kinds of things can now be data that's accessible to Cognos. And so maybe there's new use cases around, Dynamics, CRM, who knows, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of new ideas there that could be brand new use cases or could be used as additional data to augment some of the other reporting they're already doing. So definitely check those links out. And, if there's additional questions beyond that, we can talk more about those.
Great. Thank you so much.
And I see another question. I'm going to it's about Cognos connected to SharePoint in the cloud. SharePoint is one of the options that CData does connect to. So in the case where, the strategy here, and Tim showed the slide that showed the blue bubbles that reached out to different sources, the kinds of data sources that we as Cognos, as a product team, are going to focus on optimizing are the sources such as, Google BigQuery, Redshift, DB2, Oracle, Azure SQL, those enterprise data warehouses where the SQL that we generate to send down to the warehouse needs to be optimized for the specific data source so we can squeeze out the most performance. For a lot of business applications, the database on the back end is not accessible, and the only way to get the data is through a REST API. And so in those kind of situations, we're going to lean on partners like CData to get that data accessible to Cognos Analytics. And so in that case, we're not going to add a native SharePoint connector, but you can still access that data through a connection like CData. So that's kind of like the what specifically for that source, but also the kind of the why behind it. And you can see where we're going and where we're focusing.
Great. Thank you, Zach. See a couple questions on here on upgrading. One, upgrading from 11.17 to 11.24, does it need to do a fresh install, or is it just install on the top? And the answer should be, install on the top. I believe you can install almost any version of 11.0 above, over the top. Obviously, I think Tim mentioned 11.17 to 11.24 is, pretty much the same under the covers. There's not a whole lot of backend changes that can cause issues. So it should be a relatively smooth upgrade. Obviously, there's some steps to back that up just in case things do go wrong. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a presentation, I think February, that I'm doing on upgrading. So if you have questions or want to listen in on that before you do it, I'll kind of cover some of those backup contingency things you can do. And then as far as upgrading, someone also asked about going from 10.2 to 11.24. What are the complications to be expected with that? That's a big one as well. Besides it being completely, fresh install and major changes, I would recommend, looking at some of the information we have on the Senturus knowledge page. We've got a lot of good information about, planning on moving to Cognos 11 when it kind of first came out, and some of the challenges around, the studios and things that kind of go away. So if you have questions or you're interested in that, I'd say start with that. And then if you need to reach out, you have a lot of information and experience on that. When does support end for 11.17? Is that clock start?
The clock has not started yet because we have not made an announcement. So we do have an official process for that. It's IBM wide process actually for products versions going out of support. When that announcement is made, it will be a year ahead of time. So that announcement will happen this year. We just don't know the exact timing of it yet. That's just still being worked out. It's probably not that far away. And when I say not that far, I would say, a few months. So yeah, you've got at least a year. You've got a year plus a few months. What's a few? Don't know exactly, but that's about that amount of time. But when the announcement is made, you will have 12 months from that period of time. So we're not springing anything on anyone, I hope. Hope no one feels too caught out about this. But yeah, you can safely plan to do the upgrade, I would say, as much as a year from now, and you should be fine.
There was a couple questions about the bulk update tool. Is it a separate tool or is it a function with Cognos? I believe it's a separate tool that you run as part of the install. It gets included in the SDK folder. But does anyone have any additional insight on that tool that they can share?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not the best person to ask about that tool, so I'm not sure I can add any more there.
Yeah, I'll be touching on that in my upgrade installation and upgrade webinar in a couple weeks. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but I'll have more information then for sure. I know in the past, if you have Modio had a kind of a conversion tool as well that could bulk update those, in rapid fire. So that's been something that we've been, pushing people to do, get out Query Studio now for a long time. I think it was, announced for deprecation back in 2015, and we're already in 2023. It's still hanging around. So it is time to say goodbye to that. So we'll touch on that hopefully in a couple of weeks. And if you still have questions or need help with that, feel free to reach out. Let's see, what else do we have on here we haven't touched on? Feel free to anyone on the panelist line just to take one if you see one that you want to respond to.
Yeah, or Zach, Rahul, were there any that came in while I was talking that are kind of interesting ones for the entire crowd here to hear answered?
Yeah, we definitely several questions about C data. So again, check out the links put into the chat here for this. Well, there's Cognos documentation about the C data connector. There's also the C data website that shows the list of connectors and licensing information. Of course, the webinar that's coming up. The other one that seems to come up here is just a lot of questions around what of the legacy studios are being deprecated and which ones are supported. So just to kind of repeat that information, Query Studio and Analysis Studio will be supported for the last time in 11.2.4. This does not impact Framework Manager, does not impact Transformer. So those you can continue to use. I know someone had mentioned, oh, my users really like Transformer, and then that's okay, you can keep using them. So we are focusing efforts for development around OLAP technology, around planning analytics, TM1 cubes. So that is, I just mentioned that that's our area of focus for enhancements. In addition, if you're not using cubes, we do have some exciting kind of performance capabilities coming out in an upcoming release that might replace some of the use cases for which you're using Transformer. So stay tuned on that, and we'll have some new updates in that area as well. Dynamic cubes too, same thing, not going away, but we hope to have something that's would kind of entice people away from that, because we're developing in a new direction. So if you are using dynamic cubes and want to talk about some new options, feel free to reach out to us and we can share more.
Yeah, one thing to add about the legacy studios like Analysis Studio, Query Studio, 11.2 starting with 11.2.0, IE was completely phased out, so it doesn't support IE as a browser anymore. So if you haven't already tried it, you're not running 11.2 yet, that is going to be a bit of a challenge. So I believe the only browsers that can actually fully integrate or interact with those Query Studio reports is like a specific version of Firefox, like an ESR version. And I think that's it. I mean, in the past, you could kind of run IE mode in Edge, and there was a kind of some other ways to work around it. It's gotten much more difficult to even access that tool. So if you're a big Query Studio shop, you definitely want to test it out before you try to move everyone into the new version, because it's going to be probably some converting that's going to have to happen on your end.
We have some documentation now too to help people migrate off of the older studios, Query Studio, Analysis Studio. And by the way, if there's any Event Studio fans out there, don't worry, that is not on the list of things being deprecated. We continue to support Event Studio, and that does work in both Chrome-based browsers and Firefox.
Okay, let's see, a couple other questions on here. I know there's been a lot of questions on sorting. The Cognos 10 kind of had the ability to kind of do custom sorts. You can move the most important things to the top. And then in Cognos 11, there was sort of the ability to put like an asterisk or like a number 1 to kind of move things to the top. Someone's asking, is there any way to do that yet? Is it still just alphabetical? Or is there any way or anything on the way that's going to allow you to kind of custom sort, or like to kind of pin things to the top?
We don't have anything on custom sorting at this point in time, not like Cognos Connection had anyways. There was a sorting enhancement made. It was just kind of some additional capabilities, I think in 11.2.2 or 11.2.3, and it's slipping my mind right now, unfortunately, what we changed. So I'll have to get back to the person that asked that question on what we did there.
Okay, thank you. Another sort of customization Can we make the content view the default view for all users? I'm guessing the answer is yes, but it's going to involve, tweaking some extensions or some of the front end screens. Is there anything you're aware of out there that's, on the knowledge base or in the user community that's been published that kind of lets people
I
bring
don't think
content up?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a step-by-step thing there. The easiest way I think would be to override the homepage in the role customization, which you override to an extension. So the extension would just then do the redirect, I think, to the content. I haven't seen an example of this in real life, but that should work no problem, that kind of approach.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty cool customizations and landing pages people have made, so I'm sure it can be done. I'll see if I can find anything, and if I
Yeah,
do,
I mean, it
I'll add
definitely
it.
can be done because ultimately it's just a URL.
Right.
It's the if you're familiar with developing extensions and stuff, we have our different perspectives, and so the content is viewed just another perspective, and it's reflected in its URL.
I think we've touched on most of these.
Todd, I just wanted to say one thing. There was only one person who asked about it, but I just thought we should cover it. For the Microsoft Teams portion, there is no additional or special license needed to get access to that. So with Cognos 11.2.4, that automatically comes in it. However, you will need 2 licenses to normally behave, right, with the Microsoft Teams. So it'd just be a Teams license to access it, and then you need a Microsoft 365 dev license to configure it.
But if your organization is using Teams, then you've already got those.
Right. Then you've already got it. Yep. But there's no extra, special hidden license or any cost associated with it from the Cognos side.
And if your organization uses Slack, then don't worry, we haven't left you out. Actually, we supported Slack before we supported Teams. We're adding more features for Teams and with Slack. Partially that's because Teams is a more capable platform than Slack, and also because Teams just seems to be more popular with our customers nowadays. But we do have the ability to share your Cognos content into Slack as well.
I think we've touched on almost everything. I don't know if anyone wants to just jump in on one that they see, but we've got about 32 answered in the chat. Plus, we've gone through a lot here. We will try to put a written response together for all of these. There's actually still a lot in here. Some of them are duplicates. Let's see. There's a question about migrating from workspace to dashboard. I don't believe that's possible. Workspace was kind of, just like a canvas to drop existing reports. So there's not really a tool that does that. So it would just be, a matter of taking some, hopefully, rebuilding a new report and just kind of copying over your queries and objects and kind of putting them into a table or something like that. But there is no equivalent of workspace, I don't believe, and it wouldn't convert to a dashboard, which is kind of a new type of report that didn't exist in Cognos 10. It's asking about documentation, migrating Query Studio to the new reporting features. I can try to touch on that in a couple of weeks. What's not new is that, there's been a button on any Query Studio report. If you kind of click on the more button or the 3 dots, depending on, your view, there's been an option convert to report that's been there all along. So you can manually convert your Query Studio reports whenever you want. Just those people in organizations that have, hundreds, if not thousands or more Query Studio reports in various folders, it would take forever to manually go and just click that button each time. So these bulk tools are nice. They can kind of scan your whole content store, find all the Query Studio formatted files and say, hey, convert them all at once. Or if you want to do a folder by folder, you can kind of chunk them up. But the ability to kind of convert them is nothing new. It's been around for a couple of years now, as far as I know. It's built into the tool. Got some specific ones I'm not going to touch on that are just unique to environments. We'll try to touch on those in the written response about error messages and specific questions here. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has anything they wanted to touch on before we wrap up, but we're kind of getting close to the top of the hour. So I will leave the chat open a little bit longer. So feel free to put any last questions you have in. We'll capture the questions and post the recording, the slide deck, and your questions with written answers, hopefully in the near future, so you can check back and see if you had a question that we didn't get to today. Okay, yeah, Tim, anything else to add before we wrap up today?
No, not for me. Thanks a lot, everyone. There were a ton of questions coming in. We appreciate hearing from you and appreciate this opportunity to speak with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And again, feel free to put any last minute questions in and check back in a little bit and we'll have them ready for you. Thanks and have a great rest of your day.